everyone, and welcome to the Graceologie with Gwen Smith podcast. I'm Gwen Smith, and I am so glad you've joined me today. Around here, we have fun, faith-focused, grace-filled conversations, all to help you know and trust God more. Our discussions are honest, often humorous, and always practical, and they're going to encourage you in meaningful ways to live out and lean on the grace of Jesus in the midst of cluttered, messy days. You got any of those? I know I do, and I can't wait to get to today's conversation, which is all about hope, resilience, and faith. Today, my guests are Chris and Emily Norton, a young husband and wife team who have written a new book called The 7 Longest Yards. And you might just want to prepare yourself right now for a really vulnerable and challenging conversation that I am 100% confident will inspire you. Now, I don't want to give away all the details in the intro, so let me just say it this way. You know those areas in your life that you struggle to trust God with? Those circumstances, those people, those relationships, those frustrations and pains? Well, today's discussion is going to speak powerfully to the doubts and the discouragements that tell you to quit. You're going to hear about this tough struggle that Chris and Emily have been going through and that they still battle every day, from a life-altering sports injury to a life-dampening battle with depression and anxiety. Most of all, though, I'm confident that today's episode is going to bring fresh courage and hope to your heart, because Chris and Emily's story is a vibrant reminder that every setback you face can be a setup for a comeback. Well, hey, Chris and Emily, how are you guys today? Welcome to the Graceologie podcast.
Thank you. We're doing well. Thanks for having us. Yeah. We're so excited.
Thanks, Gwen.
Absolutely. So I did give you a warning, but around here, one of the things that we always start off our podcast with is I do a fast, fun favorites round with my guests so that we can get to know you in a, casual kind of way. So you guys okay? You guys ready?
I think so.
Let's do it.
Okay, I'm going to start with you, Chris, okay?
Yeah.
Okay. Brownies or apple pie?
Brownies.
What was your favorite childhood pet?
Oh, I had a little golden retriever dog named Casey, and she's a sweetie.
Okay, Chris, Jeopardy or Wheel of Fortune?
Oh, I like to go Wheel of Fortune.
Okay. What college football team do you root for?
The Iowa Hawkeyes. I bleed black and gold.
Well, I'm from Pittsburgh originally, so I bleed black and gold too, but on the pro level.
Yeah.
The Steelers. Okay. Chris, on a scale of 1 to 10, how good are you at telling jokes?
I'd say 6. I can be kind of witty and funny at times.
Okay. How would your kids rate you?
Oh, my kids are rating like a 2.
Typical dad answer. That makes sense. Okay. Chris, sweet or salty?
Ooh, salty.
Same. What's Emily's favorite color?
Pink.
Emily, is he right?
I don't know. I don't really have a favorite color.
Okay, Chris, how do you feel about 80s music?
I love all music. I mean, good music's good music, no matter what the genre or time.
Yeah, I'm digging that answer. Okay, who was your favorite superhero?
I would have to say I love Batman. I love the movies, so okay. I'm just going with Batman.
Batman. Chris, where's the most interesting place you've ever been?
I would say the pyramids in Mexico, one of the wonders of the world.
Very cool. All right, Chris, name a quirky thing about Emily that you absolutely love.
I would have to say her laugh. Sometimes she'll get to laughing and kind of snort.
Love it. That's so awesome. Chris, tell me one thing on your bucket list.
Bucket list is I want to speak in New Zealand as a presentation in New Zealand.
Oh, that's a good one. That's a real good one. And then the final question for you, Chris, is Rudy or Facing the Giants?
Oh, I'm going to go with Facing the Giants. I'll never forget the scene, the bear crawl scene across the football field with him on the back and just blindfolded, realizing he can do so much more than what he thought he could do. And I think that's really inspirational.
It totally is. It's epic. All right. You did such a good job. Emily, are you ready?
Yes, I guess so.
Okay. Emily, what's your favorite ice cream flavor?
Chocolate peanut butter.
Okay. How tall are you?
5'4".
How would your best friend describe your fashion sense?
Casual, no makeup, yoga pants, t-shirt.
Very good. Listener or talker?
Oh, I would definitely say both because I love listening, but I definitely talk too.
And you've got the coolest talking voice, I just have to say.
Oh, thanks.
So smoky and cute. I love it. Emily, what's your guilty pleasure?
Definitely chocolate and peanut butter.
Atta girl. So you're consistent with that.
Oh yeah, if it's a hard day, sometimes I just get the peanut butter jar out, get some chocolate chips, dip it in there. Mm-hmm. That's definitely it.
That's a good go-to. I'm not even gonna lie.
They go so well together.
Yeah, they do. Okay, Emily, what's your all-time favorite movie?
I don't know. I really liked the movie Wonder. I feel like there's just points for kids to be kind and not bully. And that's something I feel so strongly about, is just accepting people. So that's what pops into my mind.
Okay, that's a great one. I love it. Emily, what website do you visit the most?
Amazon.
I was going to say.
Oh, yeah, definitely Amazon.
Is that like everybody's answer? It has to be true at this point.
Definitely.
How well does Chris sing?
Not well. Yeah, his grandma likes his singing voice. Right, Chris?
She's the only one in the world.
She's the only one, yeah.
Well, if it makes you feel better, Chris, when our kids were real little, when Preston, our oldest, was 15 months old, we were driving home to my parents' house for Christmas, and Brad was trying to sing some Christmas songs to him, and he pulled out his binky, and he goes, mommy.
Oh, that's funny.
I still laugh about that.
Yeah.
So you're in good company, Chris.
It's true.
Emily, on a scale of 1 to 10, how good are you at trivia?
Ooh, really bad, too. I don't know. I'm not good at remembering those kind of facts. As a mom, there's so much other things to remember. And exactly. I don't remember that stuff.
True. Okay, well, we'll make this one easy. Ketchup or mustard?
Ketchup.
And what's your middle name?
Catherine.
Oh, that's my sister's middle name. Very cool. All right, well, you're done. That was fun. I really feel like I know you a little better. Hey guys, I host a 5-part online Bible study called The Psalm Adventure. I've had tons of questions and conversations, and I've gotten so many emails and messages asking me how you can know what God says about forgiveness and healing, and fear and depression, and finances and relationships and hope. You want to know how to connect your personal struggles to the promises of God, and you want to know what His heart for you is. And that's exactly what we explore in our Psalm Adventure, because we're going right to the source of all grace and all truth. We're going to the Bible. So I invite you to join me for my next Psalm Adventure. Each week we seek God's heart together and grow as a Graceologie community. Even if you've never done a Bible study before in your life, I promise you this Psalm Adventure is doable and will really help connect your needs to God's provision and your questions to God's answers. So join me and allow the Lord to restore your strength and your peace, heart, mind, and soul. Learn more about the study and register today by visiting gwensmith.net/psalmadventure. That's gwensmith.net/psalmadventure. Now that we've had a little fun, Chris and Emily, I would love for you to each take a moment and just introduce yourself to my Graceologie community.
Yeah, well, I'm Chris Norton, and really to know me, you'll know that I suffered a spinal cord injury playing college football back in 2010, and I was given a 3% chance to ever regain any feeling or movement back below my neck. And by grace of God and perseverance, I was able to walk across the stage of my college graduation 4.5 years later with the help of this beautiful woman sitting next to me. And then a few years after that, I was able to walk her down the aisle of our wedding. So that's a quick snapshot on a little bit of my story, and now an author, motivational speaker, a dad to an army of children.
Emily?
We have 5 daughters from the ages of 3 to 20, and we are 26 and 27. Our passion is foster care. We love being able to provide a loving and safe home for kids in foster care, and we've adopted the 5 girls that we're now mom and dad to forever, and it's our passion to just help bring hope and light to the world and help others realize their potential and purpose, and just really just help people come alive with sharing our story to help others know that anything is possible no matter what you've gone through, what you're going through.
Oh my goodness, I adore you guys. 26 and 27 with 5 girls and a heart to make a difference and an impact in the world. You guys are really off to an amazing start. We're going to talk about this brand new book you have coming out called The 7 Longest Yards. And for those of you who are listening, do not hesitate to grab this book. I'm going to tell you that right off the bat. Prepare to go through all the feels and have yourself some Kleenex. The subtitle is Our Love Story of Pushing the Limits While Leaning on Each Other. The story that you write in the book kind of takes us on a journey with you, Chris, and with you, Emily. I love the way it's kind of pieced out, where Chris is telling his story in one chapter and then Emily in another. Chris, would you go back to the injury? This is the way the book starts, but just kind of talk about kind of how that went down and the first challenges that you faced.
Yeah, so it was the 6th game of the season. Luther College, a little small school in northeast Iowa, just an 18-year-old kid. And in the 3rd quarter, we scored a touchdown, which means we kicked the ball off. And so I'm sprinting downfield to make a tackle. And I jump to make the tackle. I mistime my jump just by a split second. And so instead of getting my head in front of the ball carrier, my head collides right with his legs. In an instant, I lose all feeling and movement from my neck down. And I was completely conscious. I hear the crash of the players above me, the whistle blows, the pile clears, but I can't get up. I'm telling myself, Chris, get up. Just stand up, and nothing was working. Like someone just turned the power off to my body. And I was just so confused. By 18 years old, though, I thought I was invincible. Bad things happen to other people. It happens to people that, you read about in the newspaper, that you watch on television, or they're a guest on your podcast, Gwen.
Right.
But I just thought there's no way, something bad can happen to me. And soon, the paramedics get involved, and the paramedics call them for a helicopter. It was at that point where I realized that, my life was about to change forever. I just closed my eyes and just began to pray. Just, God, please don't change my plan. Just let me get back to my life and let me be a normal kid. Let me run off to the sideline, be with my teammates. Like, God, just whatever you do, don't change my life. But, sometimes God has a better plan for you than the plan you had for yourself. And I took off to the hospital, emergency surgery, and it was after surgery they told me I had a 3% chance to ever regain any feeling or movement back below the neck. And I felt like my life was just crumbling before me. As an independent, strong athlete, my life felt over at the time.
Yeah.
But I did find this hope, this strength inside me. I don't know where it came from, but I just said, no way, not me. This is not going to be my life. I'm not going to accept it. I'm going to do whatever I can to be that 3% and not the 97% that doesn't recover from this.
Yeah. The one thing that while I was reading this story at the beginning of your book, I was kind of holding my breath while I was listening to you describe, the voices. You hear your trainer, then you hear the team doctor, and you're realizing all of these people are coming around you. But the part where I sprung a leak is when you said you heard your voice of your dad, and I literally oh, that one just wrecked me. But how cool. I love the weaving in throughout your story of just how prevalent and how amazing your family is too.
Oh, yeah, they're incredible. They were by my side the entire time. There was always someone sleeping in the cot right next to me, which if you ever slept on a cot, it's not comfortable at all, especially a hospital cot. And they were just always there. I could call on. So many nights that I couldn't sleep. I hated going to bed. It was the worst. I felt trapped in my own body, like I was a prisoner. Every time I tried to move and I couldn't, it would just send me in a panic attack. And it was my parents or my sisters reading Bible verses or inspirational quotes, or they're reading messages that people have been writing into me to inspire me. It was those messages and the word that really spoke life into me in literally the darkest moments.
Yeah. And you talked about your dad reading from the Caring Bridge, which is what you're talking about, right? Those updates of your status. That actually, as a reader, that I believe will inform my response to the Caring Bridges. Because a lot of times I'll sign in, but then I'll just pray for, get an update and pray. But wow, I never realized that something I write on that Caring Bridge could actually fuel the healing in the heart of the one on the other side of the prayer, And so that actually helped me to, I think, going forward, when I am reading someone's Caring Bridge, I'm going to leave a note.
Yeah, no, that's great because, it was those messages that really, it gave me responsibility. I can't let these people down. Like, they're rooting for me. They're cheering me on. Like, I have to keep going, even if I don't feel like going. Just gave me that extra fire.
That's cool. And the responsibility we have is in so many different layers. So not only to not give up, but we have a responsibility to use our words wisely. And, Proverbs 18:21 says that the tongue has the power of life and death. And when you're telling your story, you talk about a couple different kind of doctors that you encountered in those first few weeks of your healing. One you called Dr. Phantom, and the other was like Dr. Georgia. Is her name Georgia from Wyoming? And she sounded so amazing. Can you tell that story?
No, absolutely. So it was the fourth night. It was about 4 a.m. I can't sleep. Again, I hated going to bed. I'm restless. And this physician comes in. And usually when someone comes in, they're just checking my vitals, and they check my vitals and then they leave. Someone does that every 2 hours. Well, this physician comes in, she checks my vitals, but then she does something else. She gets down on one knee right next to my bed, and she says, "Chris, look me in the eyes." And she was kind of mean about it. I'm not going to lie. So I lock eyes with her, and she's a short, slender woman, short reddish hair, glasses, and she has this voice that sounds like she came straight out of a Western movie. And then she says, "My name is Georgia. I'm from Wyoming. Do you know anyone from Wyoming?" And I say no. And I'm thinking, where is this going? It's 3, 4 a.m.
Yeah.
And then she says, "Well, people from Wyoming don't tell lies. And I want you to know, you will beat this. You will beat this." And on that spot, I just bust out crying. I could not hold back the tears. It was just such a powerful moment. I was in such a vulnerable place. And I was questioning whether all the time and effort I was putting into my recovery would even pay off. I was just always questioning it. And it was that time, that moment, that really restored my faith and hope to just keep going. And so after that, I hear, her words in my head of, "You will beat this." And I just keep going and not to give up on myself.
That's so huge. It seems that it was a real pivotal moment. And I love that the power of positivity, the power of like a spoken word was just this catalyst, this springboard for it. So let's pause with you there. Now, Emily, I want to go to you because we got to get to how you guys end up meeting each other, because we are sappy girls here at the Graceologie podcast. And we want to know your love story, all that kind of stuff. So Emily, why don't you just tell us a little bit about your love story, but also the backstory on how you have this incredible love for children.
So from a really young age, I'll never forget the first time I was watching a show of an orphanage in another country. I think I was like 5 or 6 years old, and I was just bawling my eyes out. And I just had this in me where I just felt like just this strong calling for kids who were in rough situations and going through difficult things. So growing up, I constantly would be looking up kids who needed to be adopted. Mom and Dad, here's this kid. And they had 4 kids, so they weren't really listening to much. But I had that calling on my life from a very young age. So when I was in high school, I started mentoring, and I met Whitley, and she was taken away from her mom when she was 11 years old. And that's when I realized that there are kids in our country who don't have a home, who are living in a shelter with staff coming in and out, who don't know that they're loved or special. They have no idea who God is and that they're not alone. And coming from such an amazing family where I always had parents who were constantly there and constantly bringing us up, my fire just ignited in me. I was just ready to do everything I could to bring God to people and just to help bring life into others. So that's what I started doing, is doing everything in my power to help kids who I could tell like were struggling at school or in different programs. And I was able to meet a lot of different kids during that time where I was ready to, this is what I'm going to do for the rest of my life. I learned some lessons later on of how you have to do that when you're taking on so much darkness and pain. At the time, I was putting it on my own shoulders, and instead of giving it to God. I'll never forget, this girl opened up to me about being sexually abused. I was in high school, I believe a junior in high school, and I was talking to my mom about it. I was so upset that could ever happen. And she looked at me and was like, Emily, I really worry about you. You need to take care of yourself. And I'm like, what? I have everything I need. That doesn't make any sense at all. Why would I need to take care of me? There's people out there who have nothing. I need to take care of them. So I was so stuck in that mindset. It was just my passion. So I went to college, and then I met Chris. And at that time, I was still doing what I could to just help kids in these situations. Chris and I met online, and
this is what had me totally laughing. I was like, what?
It was this instant connection. When we met in person, I was very drawn to him and his attitude with just his work ethic and how he was able to take a situation that could have destroyed him and turn it into something where he was giving back and helping others. So honestly, it was like just a connection from God. I had never felt with somebody, but from the very beginning, I felt like we were supposed to be together. And it just kind of grew from there.
That's awesome. I love it. So yeah, we'll come back around to all of that and where you are now with being married and the 5 girls. Today's episode of the Graceologie with Gwen Smith podcast is sponsored by my absolute favorite seasonal subscription box, FabFitFun. Receive 20% off your first box when you go to fabfitfun.com and use the code Graceologie. Have you tried it yet? If you don't already know about FabFitFun, it's a seasonal box with high-quality, full-sized beauty, fitness, and lifestyle products. I love it so much. It retails for $49.99, but always has a value of over $200. And getting your FabFitFun box in the mail actually feels like it's your birthday, like 4 times a year. I love it. So head over to fabfitfun.com and use coupon code Graceologie for 20% off your first box. I'm telling you, you're going to love it. I want to get back to Chris. So heading back to you. So you mentioned that you were determined to be in that 3%, the 3% who would be able to recover and move from the neck down. So what's up with that goal, and like, how are you doing with that? And what has Emily's role been in all of your healing?
Yeah. So, from the very beginning, when the only thing I could move was my head, I just nodded my head yes and no for hours. And, I looked like a giant bobblehead just bouncing my head around. And, then it moved to my shoulder. I was shrugging my shoulder for hours. I was just committed to do as much as I could. I went from, 1 hour physical therapy and occupational therapy to 3 hours, and 3 hours wasn't enough. So I asked the hospital for a 4th hour. They said no. And, so I asked them, why not? They said, well, no one's ever asked for a 4th hour. And then eventually I got that 4th hour, but 4 hours wasn't enough. So I asked them for a 5th hour, and they meant it this time because they said no. And, but instead I had my physical and occupational therapist write up workouts I can do on my own. And so I just kept working and working, progressing, eventually started to move a little bit in my legs, and I eventually transitioned back to college. And it was at college, 3 years later, where I met Emily. And at the time I told her about this crazy goal of mine to walk across the stage in my college graduation, and she loved it. She thought it was so powerful, and she pretty much became my own personal trainer. She was just always pushing me and guiding me, and she learned how to walk with me and do like my physical training. So we became a team instantly, and she was like just as fired up about my goal as I was, which was saying something. And it was really powerful to have her come alongside me and give me that inspiration, that lift that I needed. And so we trained for this goal, and sometimes putting 4 to 6 hours a day to make it happen. And 4.5 years later, the day before this graduation, where she was going to help me across the stage, so I I had a surprise proposal for Emily the day before the graduation walk. And I was way more nervous for the proposal than the actual walk in front of thousands of people. And so I had like a videographer there, a photographer, family and friends surprise us at this banquet room at a restaurant. And we thought we were going to pick up a graduation gift for me. And little did she know that the room was set up with flowers and candles and a videographer and photographer in the corner. And the rose petals spelled out, "Will you marry me?" And we also had a song that was playing as we came in.
Okay, what song?
It was All of Me by John Legend.
Oh, that's such a good song.
It was
chill bumps.
It was really popular when we first started dating. So it kind of became our song. And so I had that playing and asked her to marry me. I think I fumbled my words probably several times. And it would have been really awkward if she would have said no. Thankfully, it all worked out. And I just made it the moment the next day even more special to walk across the stage with my fiance, not just my girlfriend, someone I'm going to spend the rest of my life with.
Yeah. So not only are you a focused achiever, but you're a total romantic. That's what I'm hearing.
I had to step up my game. I'm not the most romantic person, and I knew I had to do this proposal big. So, yeah, I went all out for the proposal.
Yeah, it sounds like you leveled up well.
I did.
You did.
Yeah. And then we were able to walk across the stage, and it went really well. We put a lot of pressure on ourselves to make it right. And we wish we would have enjoyed the moment a little bit more than what we did, just because we wanted things to go perfectly and just should have just been trusting God instead of ourselves. But by the grace of God, it just was a really powerful moment for a lot of people.
That's interesting that you say that, because I actually feel that way about my wedding day. I think that I was so stressed about all the details and about things going right that I didn't savor it like I should have.
Mm-hmm. I think that happens with a lot of people.
Yeah.
Putting on a big event and you want it to go so well, it's easy to not put your trust in God and to just want it to just go as well as possible. But with the wedding walk then a few years later, we had learned a lot by that point, and we truly just knew in our soul that it was part of his plan with the wedding walk, which helped us to stay more in the moment. It was definitely a different feeling.
It was a different feeling.
You just had this peace.
Yeah, we had more peace, even though, we had People magazine there. We had a documentary film crew at our wedding. We had way more peace then than just at the graduation stage with my buddy's camera.
Yeah, and you had also matured.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, we had learned a lot by that time.
Yeah, we put a lot more trust and faith in God and just trusting in him and our, the preparation that we've already put into it, and just, whatever happens. It's just his plan, and let it, unfold as he sees it to be.
Yeah. I think that, first of all, if you're listening, you have to check out the 7 Longest Yards book, which is what we're talking about, the story of Chris and Emily Norton. Their front cover is actually of that walk right at the end of their wedding ceremony. It's an amazing cover, an amazing story. It's on video, which, I will definitely have links in the show notes to all of this stuff. There's so many links that we're going to have in these show notes. But you can find that at gwensmith.net/Graceologie and find the episode with Chris and Emily Norton for sure. So you talk about trusting God and learning and growing in that process to release the emotions and the expectations of what's before you. But I know that for all of us, no matter where we are in faith, that's still a daily challenge. And in the book, you really are vulnerable, both Chris and Emily, with some of the emotional hurdles and mindset challenges along the way, even with the relinquishing of that trust and control and things like that. Chris, some of the words that really rose from the pages that I think my listeners will connect deeply with, even without the life-altering spinal injury, but just with our life circumstances, our feelings of panic. There were times when you said you felt trapped and you wanted to wake up from the nightmare. Now, circumstances are different for every listener, but I think we've all felt that. What are some of the ways that God has shown you his faithfulness throughout your journey, or some of the lessons that you've learned about the importance of mindset in facing an obstacle and just that reliance on God?
Yeah, what was huge for me, in that beginning stage when I just wanted to escape so badly, was just trusting in God and in the process. And I can tell you how many times I've asked God, why is this happening? Like, what's going to come from this? I felt like a deep calling, maybe a purpose, like he was going to use this in a special way, but I just had to keep going. But I just wanted a glimpse. My God, this would make my life so much easier if I just knew the purpose behind it, or what you can do with this mess, because I had no idea what he could do with this huge mess that I was dealing with. And what it made me it did force me to just stay grounded in the present and just to focus on what I do have. So I was surrounded by family. I was surrounded by my sisters, my friends. And then I also was blessed just with the opportunity to just get to work. Like, I have the opportunity today to better myself. And so I'm going to do whatever I can today to maximize each and every opportunity, because your future will take care of itself when you take care of today. And so that was my whole mindset, was just to stay present, because I can't tell you how many times when I'd be doing an exercise, we'd celebrate. I'll never forget, I was able to curl my left arm. It was the first time I was able to curl my left arm up to my shoulder. And we're all celebrating. We couldn't believe I was able to curl my left arm. It's a miracle. And then I had this glimpse of what was life like just a couple weeks ago. Wow. As an 18-year-old full strength athlete. And it ripped all the happiness and joy out of me, just because I just felt horrible. I wanted that back. But it reminded me, it taught me a lesson that I can't go backwards. I have to stay present and celebrate the little victories each and every day, because it's those little victories, it's that progress that I was making in that moment that I would use for fuel and energy to move forward. And so it just forced me to just stay very, very present.
Yeah, that's powerful. I love that heart directive. It's focus on what you have, not what you don't have. There was another strong lesson that was very similar, but with one word difference that you kind of kept coming back around to in the book. And it was, you had to focus on what you could do versus what you couldn't do. And that was it. I saw this determination. I almost could visibly see your determination. I could see your 3% goal, because you're like, just really recognized it. And you talked about in the helicopter that you came to this awareness of you get to choose.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, in the helicopter, I was beginning to lose my breath. I was so focused on the breath that I was losing that I forgot on the air that I was getting, and that just focusing on what I was able to receive and able to get, because I think it's so easy in life to only focus on what you're losing and what you don't have, and that mindset is so discouraging, and it just makes you want to quit. And give up. And then when I began to focus on the air I was getting, it gave me this sense of confidence and this relief that I'm moving forward. And when you feel like you're moving forward, you're making progress, even if it's just focusing on the one breath that you're getting, it just gave me enough fuel to keep going. And I think that's so important for anyone, no matter what you're going through, just focusing on the little victories, on the things that you are able to do and what you are receiving and the progress you're making. That's going to give you that energy to move forward. And the same token, to point that out to other people. If you want to energize and inspire other people, recognize their progress and the things that they can do, because that will help them move forward as well.
Yes. And even lifting your eyes from yourself to those other people is powerful. Mm-hmm. And that's, Emily, one of the things that you've done very well. And so let's come back around to you, because in chapter 2, you kind of introduce yourself. You do tell that story about starting to come alongside of young girls who were in complicated life situations. And you make the statement that real faith acts. Obviously, we see that in James. We see that all throughout the Word of God. Jesus commands that for us to take care of others. And you talk about following Jesus means helping others. And obviously, you have a special heart from this, and I believe that's just from the Lord. But what has God been teaching you about this? And what did, in those early years when you were coming alongside of Chris and becoming his wife now for a year, so exciting, what has God been teaching you about real faith taking action?
So I would say that, that definitely is my passion and my purpose, and it's just what makes me come alive. When I go into action, when you have these, these messages from the Holy Spirit where you feel like you're supposed to talk to that person or help this person, just being generous can change everything, like putting that into action. And that's when I truly believe, like, if you want to have just inner happiness and be filled with so much joy and peace and follow the calling that God is calling all of us to do, and that is to help others and put it into action and care for those who don't have anything and who are struggling and meet them where they are. I believe that that is the key to living a life of just like absolute fulfillment and joy in a life that's going to keep living on even when you're gone. Like, that's a major goal of mine, is like, I want to know by the time that I'm not on this earth anymore that I impacted these kids or people in a way that will last forever. Because I believe that that's why we're all here, is to do what we can to make this world a better place by the time we're not here any longer and make it count. So that's what I try to do with being a foster parent, is just really try to help these kids realize their potential, realize how loved and special they are, and taking that extra mile to do things for people when they don't expect it just fills them up and helps them realize the love that God has for them. And I just realized, like, when you put it in action, you can absolutely transform and help people's lives. But I did have to learn a lot of different lessons, that it's not all on my shoulders and I can't do it by myself. And I absolutely have to depend on God through it, because when you are meeting people where they are and they're struggling and going through dark times, you have to surrender that to God and ask Him to, like, take it off of your shoulders, but help. I would say the biggest thing that I've seen, the biggest change for the kids that we've helped, is when I teach them to depend on God and teach them about God and what that means. And obviously then help them realize how loved and special they are, which is a complete just how God views us.
And as women, I think a lot of us are just bent towards trying to impact the lives of others and come alongside and help. We're nurturers by nature, a lot of us. Even in this ministry that you were called to, this passion of yours to come alongside of the hurted and, those who just needed help. We see from your story that it wasn't all smooth sailing, and it wasn't just, oh, good, in Jesus' name, everything's going to be easy. I see that you've had quite a few challenges, and I know that my listeners are going to resonate powerfully with your story. One of the things you write about is battling anxiety and depression and just a debilitating season of darkness that was prior to you guys saying your vows. Can you tell us a little bit about your journey with depression, and perhaps even how Chris was there to support you through that?
Absolutely. So again, kind of just going back to where I was when I was trying to do everything I could and really follow God's calling. I definitely had some different, mindset that I needed to learn about depending on God and not depending on myself. Because I became very, very depressed, and I felt like that Emily who cared about others and did everything she could to help others was gone. I went through that time where I became extremely depressed. I felt like there was no hope. I'm extremely independent. I want to do everything myself. I don't like help from anyone. And so I had this mindset. First of all, I did not accept I'm depressed. I couldn't accept that because it made no sense. I didn't understand it at all. Number one, and number two, I realized and thought about all of the kids that I had tried helping. Like, they went through really hard things. Like, that makes a lot of sense that they would be depressed and be struggling with mental health issues. But for me, who has everything I could possibly need and more than what I need, why would I be depressed? Like, it just made absolutely no sense. So I fought it for way too long, and I suffered way too long because I didn't want to believe that it could be true. And I felt weak if I got help. So I didn't get help. No one knew what I was going through. Chris could tell, but no one else. Chris is the only one that knew part of it. But I hid it from everyone. My family didn't know. They're extremely supportive. I hid it. No one had any idea. People looked at me and felt like I had everything together and I was happy and living a great life. And on the inside, my life had stopped. I honestly, I just was not living anymore. And during that time, I had this mindset and these thoughts of, if I can't get through this, then I'm never going to get through anything in life. Like, when something bad actually happens, how will I survive? I was trying to prove to myself that I could get through it so that I would know, in life, when I go through something difficult, that I could get through that too. And that just not wanting to be vulnerable, not admitting I needed help, and just being super stubborn and super independent. I honestly suffered for a few years, like way too long. And it took a lot to pull me out of that.
What were the steps that you took to pull out of that?
So the first step was I just went to church. I went away from God. Again, that was like I didn't want to face what was going on. And when I went to God, I would break down and I'd feel things too strongly. And so I just went away from God. So like I used to have such a strong relationship with him. And then during that time when I needed him more than ever, I went completely the wrong direction. And so I don't know exactly why I went to church, but there's one time where I just went to church. I never told Chris I was going. I just went by myself, and the message was about praying. And so I bought a prayer journal, and like that was the first time in a long time that I prayed. Previously, honestly, I prayed for God to just take my life. Like that would be the only prayer that I would say during that time, because life felt so hard. Everything was just draining and exhausting, and doing the small things felt like there's no possible way that I could do it. So at that time, I finally let things out. And then we had a church come up right by where we were living at the time, and we started going every Sunday. And that's where I started getting my strength. And there's a message about sometimes God puts people and has people go through tough times so they can take away parts of them that aren't going to help fulfill their purpose and help them to learn more about God and what that means. And I strongly believe if I didn't go through that time and didn't learn to depend on God, to learn that it's okay to get help, that we were made to and designed to need help from the one who created us, that I would not be able to be a foster parent. I would not be doing what we're doing. Being able to let go of what's out of our control and not being so independent and not vulnerable and thinking everything's on my shoulders and taking it all on me, I would not still be a foster parent and be following my purpose.
Yeah, that's awesome. So, Chris, how did Emily's struggle with depression in that season affect you? And then the follow-up question to that is, what would you say to someone who has a loved one or is living with a family member that's dealing with depression?
Yeah, Emily was making me cry talking about that again. Yeah, it was tough because I wanted to help and I didn't know how to help. And I thought I was helping. I'm a motivational speaker, right? I can motivate her with some words, and that didn't work at all, as you can imagine. Just, trying to get her to get back to the things she loved with caring for children or running or, going back to those things, and and telling her what to do was the last thing as well to motivate her. And it was just, I wish I would have just listened more versus trying to I like to fix things. I think that's kind of maybe a male sometimes role goes into that fix it mode. And I should have just been listening. And also I limited God too. I didn't depend on God in that time. I didn't think that would fix what we were going through. I felt like it was too big for God. And I really limited him. And I'm just thankful that we went to that church, Christ Fellowship, and it was kind of that church that spoke life into us and gave us the strength to move forward and gave Emily the strength to seek help and to be vulnerable and open up. And it was tough because, she would take out a lot of her anger, on me, and she didn't know how to control her emotions at that time. She was trying to figure it out, and we were both trying to figure it out. We didn't know what to do. I went through a spinal cord injury, and I didn't go through a depression. So I didn't understand it, even from my own circumstance. And I think even from my own circumstance, I became more calloused because of what I've gone through. And it was such a life-altering thing that I didn't realize the magnitude of mental health. Everyone sees my challenges, but you can't see someone going through mental health, anxiety, or depression. Right. And mental health is just as paralyzing as physical paralysis at times. So just recognizing that and just being more listening, and then just also never limiting God, because God can do incredible things, and it just changed our life.
Yeah.
I would say to add on to that, so many people who are in hard places, and the place I was in, I was searching for the answers in the wrong place and trying to do things alone and by myself. And I truly, truly believe that the only answer in my situation and a lot of people's who are really struggling is God. Mm-hmm. It is going to him to get the strength, because there is no way that I would have ever went in for an appointment with like a mental health therapist if I didn't go to church first, if I didn't pray first and get that strength. Like literally on the way to the appointment, I almost called and canceled. There's $100 deposit that I would have lost. I'm like, I could care less about that. Mm-hmm. Like I was feeling so uncomfortable, but at that moment when it would have been so easy to turn around, which would have, continued the suffering, I stopped and I prayed and I cried in the car on the way there when I got there, and I cried the whole time, but I asked for strength from God. And that was the hardest step, like by far. But when you can go to the one who's able to help you do the impossible and give you strength when you feel like you can't even move or get up and do anything, like that's when things can change. And that's the only answer for me and for our story. Like, I feel like that is the answer, is just going to him.
Yeah. Well, what really, as you guys were sharing how the Lord brought you to himself, I can't help but realize that in the New Testament, the Bible tells us that we should not forsake the community of believers, the fellowship of believers, that we should continue to gather with like-minded people that will spur us on and help us out. And just that whole sense, the beautiful picture of community, that just comes straight to the forefront here. It sounds like the Lord used your church, the body, the new friends to say, girl, yes, go to God, but here's the practical. Yes. Let's get beyond this in prayer, but then in the practical. And I think that's huge. I think our tendency, tell me if you agree, Emily, is to want to isolate, even stiff arm it. Mm-hmm. How do you think community played a role of that, the body of believers?
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, that is exactly what changed everything, like going to church and having that community around us with believers and with people who you could just see they had so much hope when I didn't. That was encouraging, and that helped me realize like I'm not alone, and there's other people who've been through hard things and they've made it through it. And that's when I started getting a little glimmer of hope. But you're right, like there was multiple things I had to do. It wasn't just start praying. Like it was, my chemicals were so messed up in my body, and I had to get on medication and go get professional help as well. Like if you go through a really bad accident, have a bunch of broken bones in your body, you go to the doctor and you get them fixed. And you might also need to really pray. Like you're probably gonna have to pray to get through the time if it's really hard. It's a combination of both things. It was definitely not one or the other. It was definitely a combination. I needed both of them. Right after I went and got on that medication, she's like, in about 3 weeks, it's gonna start helping like level things out, and you'll be noticing a difference. And it was clockwork. Like literally 3 weeks later, everything started changing. I'll never forget, we were having a night where we were playing cards, and for the first time in a few years, I felt, man, like we are living a great life. Like I have a great life and God is providing so much. And I did not feel that at all for so long because of how inside me and, the chemicals and like the physical part of it was how I was being affected from it. Changed what it blinded me from what I had the whole time.
Wow. I'm just really excited about this moment because I sense that there would be, many in the Graceologie community who are battling depression, anxiety, or just something that they feel is just not fixable in their lives. And the picture even of the two of you getting plugged in at your church with a community of believers, it kind of grounds us in accountability as well. It is secrets that keep us from healing so many times in our lives. I just sense that there are definitely listeners who are keeping all of the emotions that are tied up in their lives and this season maybe even of darkness a secret. So what would you say to the one who's like, yeah, I haven't told anyone either?
Yeah, I would say that there is nothing wrong with you. That first of all, I am so sorry that you're going through that. Honestly, it's so dark and you feel like you can't breathe and you feel like things are never going to change and that there's no hope and you won't ever be you again. But there's always hope. And the secrets, like you said, that can keep you from That's what the devil wants. He wants you to keep those inside you. He doesn't want you to heal from what you're going through. He doesn't want you to give a voice to what you're feeling. It becomes not as powerful when you can let it out. So just letting it out and realizing that people will be there to still love you, still support you. There's absolutely nothing wrong with you. We all need help. And it's so important to just continue to pray and lean on God through absolutely everything.
Yes. That's so powerful. And that's such a needed word. I love it. So the vulnerability, the way you guys share your story, the story that is still being written so beautifully by the Lord, it's really powerful. And I'm excited about what God has you doing. Why share it with the world? Why write the book? Why travel and speak?
Yeah, I mean, that was hard for me, is when we first started talking about this, when we knew we had a book was coming, and Chris had mentioned, I think it'd be really cool for people to get your perspective and to talk about the depression and anxiety. And at first I'm like, absolutely no way. Like, no way. I will not do that. And then I just had this voice in my head of, you have to, like, I truly believe it was God, like, you have to share it. Like, you don't have a choice. You went through this and you have things to say that people need to hear. I believe that God puts us through things for us, and we can use those things. He can turn darkness to light and take something that was so difficult and so challenging and turn it into your message to really help others. And I strongly think that we all should use what we've gone through to connect with others and help others who are in that place get out of it.
Yeah, just that, encourage people to just take one foot and one step in front of the other, and just to keep going, even if you don't know where you're going, and that our lowest moments can be the source of our greatest blessings. Yes. And so we just hope this book just encourages other people to feel the same and continue down that path and trust in God.
Absolutely. So, Chris, we know that on the bucket list is New Zealand. That would be super cool. So what do you think is your next 7 longest yards challenge?
That is great. Probably the teenage years for our 4 youngest daughters.
That's a great answer.
And then plus on top of that, we have our home open for more foster children. In fact, just 2 weeks ago, we had to say goodbye to 2 young kiddos that we took in, a 9-month-old and a 6-year-old who's there here with us. And so we had 7 children at one time. And, with Emily's heart and our craziness, who knows what's the next big challenge or thing that we're going to take on, but we are excited about what that will be.
I love it. Well, I have absolutely enjoyed this to the max. You guys are an awesome young couple. I'm super excited about the message God has you delivering. And I know that my Graceologie community is completely smitten with all of this as well, and challenged and inspired by. So with them in mind, Chris, would you mind closing out our time together by just praying for the Graceologie community and all these listeners?
Yes. Dear God, thank you for this day. Thank you for this life and this opportunity. We just give thanks for all that you provide, and just we ask you to bless this episode, and that it reaches other people's souls and enlightens them and gives them the courage to just take one step in front of the other, and that we just need to trust in you, God, and just help us know that you're always there. And we can't see you, but you're in our hearts. And thank you. Amen.
Amen. Well, the book is The 7 Longest Yards by Chris and Emily Norton with Mark Tabb. And the subtitle is Our Love Story of Pushing the Limits While Leaning on Each Other. I love your story. I love you guys. You're awesome. I do want to take a moment before we say goodbye and let our listeners know that, Chris, you have a nonprofit to help come alongside of others with spinal cord injuries and to offset medical expenses when things aren't covered. I would love for our communities to join you in the support of that. So would you just take a moment to tell us about that?
Yeah, so the Chris Norton Foundation was started just to help those who were not as fortunate as I was to have the NCAA catastrophic insurance policy. The insurance policy has covered all my medical and rehab expenses. And so we just will provide grants to different medical facilities to provide the best, the newest technology so that everyone in the area has the opportunity to make a recovery like mine. And on top of that, this summer, June, we are going to start our first ever wheelchair camp for kids and families. It's completely for free. And so the kids and their families will enjoy horseback riding, zip lining, archery, sports, and other fun games, and just build a community. So that's the foundation, the Chris Norton Foundation. We have raised nearly $1 million year to date.
That's exciting. I will definitely have links to the Chris Norton Foundation on the show notes. You guys can find all of those at gwensmith.net/Graceologie. Find this episode with Chris and Emily Norton and definitely support them. Definitely get you a copy of The 7 Longest Yards. Chris and Emily, it has been awesome to have you on the Graceologie podcast. Thank you so much for coming.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, thanks, Gwen.
Man, today's conversation just reminded me on such deep levels that God is faithful, that even in the hardest times, He is there and He has a plan and it is good and He can be trusted. So I hope that you were encouraged. Definitely visit Chris and Emily online and connect with them on social media when you get a chance. Today's show was edited by Chad Shuping and the music is by premiumbeat.com. If you have any questions, comments, or topic suggestions, you know I love hearing from you. So hit me with a message directly from my website, which is gwensmith.net. All of the links and show notes from today's episode can be found at gwensmith.net/Graceologie. That's gwensmith.net/Graceologie. Thank you so much for joining me today. I'll be back soon with another episode, but until then, if you haven't already subscribed, please go to iTunes and subscribe to the Graceologie with Gwen Smith podcast. Subscriptions and reviews on iTunes make a huge impact for those of us who are working hard to bring you these shows. And be sure to connect with me on social media. I love hanging out with you. I am at Gwen Smith Music on every platform. And the show is at Graceologie. Now get out there and have a beautiful, grace-filled day.